And welcome everyone to the concluding session of the Transmit 2020 Art and Science Festival. I'm Tomer Volansky, and with me Sharona Frosheim and Tal Yizrael. And as some of you may know, this festival was meant to take place in real life, with live in the museum with the live audience, the Steinhardt Museum of Nature. And unfortunately, as we all know, COVID-19 had different plans for us. So here we are. And I hope that everyone enjoyed yesterday's and today's variety of performances and live experiments and activities and discussions. And we very much hope that next year we'll all meet at the museum with in real person. So thank you.
Welcome. Today we are at the Fetter Museum of Nanoscience and Art, which is actually situated at Nanotechnology Institute. It's a very unique location where our museum is within a lab building. And we are sitting here. Behind us, there is a beautiful sculpture by artist Vardi Bobo, and she worked with the scientist Orit that is researching neurons. And you can see a gigantic neuron just behind me. And over there, you can see a part of your brain, my brain, I don't know, the artist's brain that is made out of 50,000 rubber bands. And they are also we built this geodesic dome for them to be there projected as videos, but it's still a beautiful experience to hear all of them trying to synchronize. And if you go to the second slide, please. You can see another session from yesterday, salt animals, uh, triangle of research between researcher Dr. Gilit Taguri, which is a crystal researcher, and Caroline Maxwell, and paper conservators Noah Kanner McManus, and they all dived into an enigma of ever-changing painting made out of salt water from the Dead Sea and from Salt Lake in Utah. If we'll go to the next slide, we can see how it looks like when we dive into the nanoscale. You can see here the salt, the cubic of NaCl, and we can see more evidence of what happened there, but I will not tell you the whole story, so you will still have appetite to watch back our sessions. After this research and during this research, it's still an ongoing one, we built this special vitrine for the paintings to let them still change a little bit because this is somehow their nature, but still stabilize it a little bit so they will stay there in order us to be able to view them. This is a beautiful work made by artist Ili Levy in the lab of Professor Shlomo Margel. The of water is just floating over an imaginative machine that is somehow talking about the feelings of being stable and unstable in life, and it's all coated with materials from Shlomo Margel's lab. You will see the whole machine there. It's a whole theater there. So I'm exposing just a little bit of what is going on in the museums. I have way more to show you, but indeed the idea is that here everything is possible. We have nanolabs here, and every idea can arrive and be researched both from the scientific side and the artistic side. And often when artists and scientists are meeting together, they find out that they need more knowledge, and then they refer to another scientist or another artist, and then the dialogue is much broader. And we will speak about it today in the panel. But before we speak about it, I want to thank the Fetter family for allowing us to research deeply into those fields, build this museum. Before we clear the stage for the final session of the festival, we would very much like to extend our deep gratitude to the institutions and people who supported us in making this dream come true. We'll read from the paper just to make sure that I don't forget anyone. We want to deeply thank Alon Sapan, the director of the Steinhardt Museum of Natural History, Sasha Katzenelson, Tamar Tzadok, Moran Maimoni, and all the museum staff. We wish to thank the Tel Aviv University and the School of Physics, Anat Gilad and Sharon Caballo from the Cultural Diplomacy Bureau at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We also wish to thank the support of the Young Academy, the Israeli Young Academy for Science, and the support of the European Research Council, the ERC, under the European Union's Horizon 2020 program. We also like to thank Giora Yahalom and Slili from the Tel Aviv municipality, Revital Peretz Ben Asher and the Choreographers Association, the Spanish Embassy in Israel, and the Boeing Foundation in Israel. And we really hope to see you in the next Transmit Festival. Thank you. Two wonderful people that whenever I converse with them, I reveal more and more questions I want to ask. Claudia Schnugg, let me show you her book that inspired me to invite her for this session today. It's creating art science collaborations, and this is what we do here. And whenever you do something like that, you feel like you have to invent the wheel. It's not an easy thing. It's fascinating, it's beautiful, it's tough, full of failures. But when you have this book in your hand, you feel like, oh, part of this pathway was walked before, and we can rely on the experience of other people doing so. So Claudia, for many years, is researching artists and scientists collaborations. And she will speak about it today. And Orit Adar Bachar is here with us too. She's an artist and art educator, and for many years she researches her own way of thinking as an artist. So I always wanted to know, when something is brilliant, how did this person get to this idea? How is it if we talked about the sculpture behind us, which is like diving into somebody's brain? I always wanted to know how Orit is thinking about her artwork. I remember one of her artwork that I first seen, and I was fascinated by it. And now I have the chance to dive into her mind and hear about the history of this work of art. So please, Orit, can you start?
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. So, as I said, my name is Orit Adar Bachar, and I'm a fine art artist. I'm involved in sculpture and in painting and in a video and installation. After years of working in the studio and also teaching art, I have developed a growing interest in understanding the creative process. And in this short talk, I would like to discuss two issues that have to do with the creativity and, if possible, to demonstrate it. Um, Artists, as we know all, are in a constant state of looking after their next brilliant, great, original idea. Sometimes an idea will just pop up out of nowhere, just like an unexplained miracle. However, this is a very rare event, and experienced artists know that it takes more than just a miracle or luck or coincidence to land a good idea. And so, what I say now will sound like a paradox to you, but I think artists are aware of the limitation of imagination. The artist creating drawing will tell you that sometimes it needs unintentional random movement of the hand that lead them to the better idea, or choreographer know that it's better in many cases the body on itself will discover the more accurate move rather than thinking about it. So the two issues that I want to discuss is one, artists, and I believe also researchers are interested in planning the process, planning their own rules, creating the right environment, the right setup to enable raw ideas to take form from the very rough state to the more defined state. Two, artists and researchers will spend years upon years holding in their heads the fragments of a concept, unfinished thoughts, a single line of a poem, a, even very blurry beginnings of something which they cannot even complete, and they are able to carry those things for years and move them over and over, revisit them again and again tirelessly, and one day something clicks. Now I would like to demonstrate to you this the entire thought process that I went through while creating one of my sculpting projects. And I will not explain the work, and I'm not going to discuss the meaning of it. I'm just going to try to describe the way which it came to be. So it all started in the 80s in my studio in New York, and I was a student there. And I back then I was already created like big installations, interested in spatial work. So one day I was standing there in the studio, and nonchalantly I picking up an empty box that was just lying there around, and I picked into that, and I want to show you what I saw. So I'll just share this share screen. Okay, so I'm what you see here, it's a cardboard box. And there is another. It's a very small cardboard box that then I picked into them. And this is a container of eggs. And this is another one. And this is a carton of milk. And this is a container of cheese. And this is an ice cream container. You know, I kept looking at those spaces, and this is also an ice cream container. This is just a red empty plastic box. And this is a container of bleach. And this if I'm not wrong, it's a box of, it's an empty box of headphones. And again, cardboard boxes. You know, I made holes in these containers to let the light into them. And I was amazed to see how the spaces started looking entirely industrial. And, you know, I could just forgotten all about it. And just to think it was an amusing incident, childlike moment. But instead, I memory those spaces. They are stuck with me. And it's not that I just remember them. I analyze them, and later I started building them out of wood. This is a wood one, and this is how the way it looks. They are still very small. I'm talking about 20 to 40 centimeters. I mean, it's very, very small. Here, sometimes it's even less. And this is how it looks in exhibition spaces, like this. And you know, later I started looking for ways to create more a dramatic feel. I was looking for, I don't know, a cinematic experience. You know, I was looking for a way to do that. So I use motors and lighting, and look how it looks. And you know, from here to there, it became a very big pieces because of the motors, and it filled an entire room. Okay. Now I want to show you a piece of video work which calls Gateways from 2012. And so first, let's look at it, and I'll talk about it later. Okay. So if you haven't noticed, this was a miniature. It's a 8 meters long miniature, a wooden structure, which I worked and filmed segment by segment, as you see here, because it was too big for my studio. And what you see here is the way we created the smoke with electric kettles, and we funneled in the smoke to the miniature. And, you know, people ask me again and again, how did I imagine it, how I created it, how I designed it. And actually, it's impossible to design it. It's impossible. As I said before, artists are very aware of the limitation of imagination. And here I was unable to really know how, you know, I couldn't really know in advance how the light would look like in the small spaces, or the smoke, or how a fluorescent light in compared with warm light would look like. So therefore, the only thing I focused about was the process of building up a setup, and a setup that will allow me to experiment and to let the ideas to create themselves, I would say. Rather than I think about it, rather than I let the thought process to block me. Here is still the installation, but that's the way it looks. What it takes, it's a motor, a rotating motor, and wooden structure that stimulate architecture elements like walls, doors, sometimes windows, and I would shift them around, playing or using a dialogue between light and shadow and elements until I really thought it's good or accurate, and I would write it down in a sketchbook. That's the way it looks. Finally, I want to show you another video art. It's a very small part of a work. The name is Himmelweg, The Road to Heaven, and it's from 2014. And the piece, well, the motivation was to show something that I think that the mind refuses in a way to imagine. And what I wanted to show is a gas chamber in action. So instead of using a human figure, I used a cockroach. And it was very important for me that the scene would look realistic and non-realistic, or I would say surreal at the same time. One thing that's very important for me to mention is that the text that you'll hear is a authentic Nazi document. Uses a very sanitized language that describe one of the early experiments with gas, gassing to death people. Pay attention that Jews are referred as cargo or load. So here it is.
It has been observed that when the doors are shut, the load always presses hard against the doors as soon as darkness sets in. This is because the load naturally rushes toward the light when darkness sets in, making closing the doors difficult. Also, because of the alarming nature of darkness, it would therefore be useful to light the lamp before and during the first moments of the operation.
I believe that's it for now.
Wow. So it was several years of process, actually,
Yeah.
from the very simple box, which is to carry cargo, to another different, totally different cargo there.
Yeah, more than 20 years.
Wow.
In 10 minutes.
So it's almost like a mountain train diving into your memory, into your thoughts. I wonder, when you look back into your process, when you're doing now a new process, is it somehow influencing it?
You mean if I look back, if it helps me?
Yes.
I don't look back. I think when I was younger, it was harder for me to create. I was more self-conscious, and I was more uptight. And the more I grow up, the more I get older, I feel more free to do whatever I want. So it's not that I have to go back and look back. I just have it with me. The more freedom that I need, and the more experienced knowledge to work. And really, if I really want something for myself, is to do whatever I want. It's not very easy. It's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. Because on the other hand, I can criticize myself over and over again, but I taught myself to ignore criticism, self-criticism. I just go and work, And when I was younger, it was harder for me to do that.
That's interesting.
Mm.
And Claudia, when you look at process of artists and process of scientists, maybe you'll tell us about your beginning as an observer of or researcher, and also actually part of artist and science collaborations. Can you tell us about this process?
From the beginning, yeah. So it started also in a very, maybe not in that as such a self-conscious process, because I started from a more external position as a researcher. I'm trained as a social and economic scientist, also with some training in cultural science. So this framed very much my approach in understanding what happens in these collaborations. But, and as soon as I got into the field, it was more the step of bringing the theoretical knowledge and what I thought I built up as how it should work, translating this to practice and to all these diverse situations and brilliant people working from so many different fields, that it actually started to get a little bit, it started to grow from there more than from the theory. And only with some time I learned to integrate both aspects, what I did in practice and what I thought of in theory. And then the more practice I had, the more I understood what actually I was writing and thinking and theorizing about before.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's got easier, but it's still every single process is different, and every single process is another one.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm not sure, should I go from with presentation? Or?
Yes, we'd love to hear.
But actually, what I heard and Orit say is, it's giving me goosebumps, because I think it's a very honest and a very important insight to an artistic process, but also actually to any process of creating something, that it's not just one spark, but it's something building up. And of course, it's also giving me goosebumps, although it's not the first time I saw this intense work you're showing, because it's really an amazing and touching work, and very intense. And this thing that you just invented, something that builds up, and that comes from a lot of experimentation, exploration, and research and engagement. And actually, that's also what I do in my work, focusing on understanding what this process is, and also what this joint process is, and what the conditions are to make these collaborations flourish. So I start sharing the screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you see the?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see it.
Good. I just briefly start introducing myself. I'm Claudia Schnugg, and I had the privilege, as you can see on this slide, to work with many very exciting projects and many different partners, from Ars Electronica to Science Gallery, working with scientists in labs, in nanoscience labs, in astronomy, but also in biosciences, and working very artistic projects and very artistic explorations of technological media in hybrid formats, but also working with fashion tech designers and technology agency and technology and industry, but also with groups of artists and curators and people from Leonardo. So I try to bring a lot of insights and from my perspective as what I'm trained in as a scientist and as a researcher into all these processes to enrich them and to understand what make art science actually flourish and interesting, and what it makes what helps these collaborations to grow, what helps them to become interesting collaborations and not one-way direction exchange of information. But also what it helps, or how it helps to bring back knowledge and new perspectives and new opportunities to the different fields. So this big question is really how to create a fertile ground for art science collaboration, and what are the conditions to make them flourish. So I tried to understand with the tools I had at hand, or I have at hand, what are different levels of these interactions that make them so interesting, so fruitful, and actually gives them such a great potential. So it has different levels from what does it actually do to a human individual, or also to groups, to encounter art and to encounter aesthetics and to reflect on that and to have this different sensory engagement, sensory experience, but also learn to reflect on their own embodied knowledge, tacit knowledge, and sensory knowledge. But also, what does the encounter with science do? Because it's more than giving information to the artist. It's also about tools, about new perspectives, about opening up a new space and new realms. Then the second level, going from this very abstract and theoretical level I'm interested in, is also what does the actual collaboration process do to individuals, but also to the organizational and to the group setting, or whatever setting they're in. So what does these encounters do to somebody who's not used to talk to somebody who's outside their own discipline about the work they're doing in their own discipline? How does it open up their perspectives, but also how does it change their language, or help to create public engagement? But also, how does it feed back into the organizational or group setting, like a scientific group, a laboratory, but also the organization itself, where this scientific person is embedded in? But also, what does it do to the artist and to their settings? Because it's also new tools and new processes the artist gets access to, but it's also feeding back into the artistic work, and thus into the artistic setting and the artistic world. And then in the end, it's really how all these changes and all these experiences affect personal and organizational processes. How does this create more long-term impact? And how does it actually also then on a more long-term level feedback and create potential within the organization, within the artist's work, within the scientist's work, or within the laboratory's work, for example. So thanks again for mentioning my book in this very lovely way. It's an honor, really, to hear somebody talking about the book in this way. So the piece where I wrote most extensively about this is my book, Creating Art Science Collaboration, Bringing Value to Organizations, really trying to draw on different theoretical concepts, also understanding the individual, the social, and the organizational level. What does it do to create these collaborations? but also what are the conditions these collaborations need to become impactful, but also giving some tools to understand what happens in these collaborations. Because what I've seen a lot is that many participants or practitioners are often not even aware where are all these dimensions of impact of art science collaboration on their own processes, on their own work, and what potential is there. So just to give a few aspects, is like that I'm discussing there is talking about, for example, contextualization. We've been how do we understand what we do in a broader context, in a social context? What is the social and cultural impact? But also thinking about scientists in a very in the way they are often embedded in their organizational structure, in their laboratory processes, that they rush from one project to another, that it's often very important for them to become space, or to become opportunities to create some space where they can reflect what is actually the impact of the work, what is where are connections to different disciplines or to maybe even neighboring disciplines where they can connect to and where their own work has some implications. But going back, connecting this also to the idea of liminal spaces or creating space. Previously, this morning, we had an interesting session talking with scientists and artists about future collaborations. And one point that came up in the breakout room I was in was very much about these spaces, about permission, these spaces of art science collaboration that they give to the artists and to the scientists to be confused, to explore, and to explore in new ways. And without having this constraint, for example, of a hierarchy or of some traditions in their own discipline, because this space between the artists and scientists creates something very special that gives room to explore and to do things in a completely new way. Yeah, so being aware of the time of my 10 minutes, maybe there's also one thing I want to say about the meaningful work. I think it's also a lot that's very interesting and very important about art science collaboration, is to bring back some meaning to your own work, to understand why it's so important to you, why you want to do what you're doing, and to make fun and to motivate through having something that's fun and that's also exploratory and maybe sometimes also a little bit playful, but also creating this meaning and or using this meaning and this creation of some playful interactions as something that excites you, that you can also translate to public engagement or even into some educational formats that then also excite the next generation about art science and bringing all these different perspectives to what's our environment, what's our nature, what are we actually doing, to inspire them to be more art scientists.
So it's really interesting, this point of the space, the need for space, either a liminal space or a place to work together. And one of the interesting things that happened here was that the director of the museum, Yuval Garini, Professor Yuval Garini, was actually the head of the Nano Institute here in Bar-Ilan University. And he was walking down the stairs of the new building, up and down, looking at all this space, and he imagined that should be a museum here, a space to make art and science. And when he called me in, he said, I imagine a museum here. And I said, I can see it. It was so concrete, and there was nothing. I mean, there are like there were stairs, there were spaces, and nothing else. So even if you have a space, you have to believe that you have a space sometimes to do so. And I think that the beautiful thing here or in other collaboration where a space is there, if sometimes it's not a physical space, even just time, a space in time to create, is it's geographical space, and it's the architecture that allow to do it. It's this minute when an artist is coming in, meeting a scientist, and because of the geography of the chemistry department, biology, and physics are all turned into the same space, the same kitchen. For example, here, an artist is coming to visit this, a scientist coming into the kitchen, making coffee as well. They start to chat. They go back to the lab he intended to be there from start, where he scheduled his meeting. And then just from that, we can start it. And then we have to have time to do it, to schedule to do it. Sometimes you could say that you want to make art and science, but then you have to be very precise about it. It's like an experiment, like the schedule you put in your studio. You have to be in your studio some of the days. Sometimes it's a struggle to get to the studio. You have other things to do. Although it's very romantic to think that I will do art and science, you have to prepare yourself to do it and to be patient. It takes a long time.
Yes, and really to give it space and time, to give it enough time for joint exploration.
A lot of time.
Mhm.
A lot of time.
And to fail 99% of the time.
That's right. But you need really the permission to have the time to go deeper, to get rid of all the shoulds and the mights and the well-behaved and the proper thoughts in order to get to the real stuff. And I want to add one more thing, that I feel that situation these days is that in an art institute, you might see a scientist being invited as a teacher, like from the computer field or technology fields. They might invite you to be a teacher in the Bezalel Academy in Jerusalem. You might see it. But the other way around, I cannot really see somebody invites me. I mean, science institution that want, seriously, that they want an artist to be with them for a long time, being paid by that for a long time to see what happens, to see really what happens. If something happens in a very ongoing dialogue between scientists and artists. And if I can wish myself something, like it's one of this, to really be invited.
Actually, she was just a little gossip. She was invited to be a scientist. She came here to speak with some of our scientists, and you went to one of the labs here, I remember, and
but it's I was invited, yeah.
and she was asking wonderful questions, and the scientist asked her to come over and stay with them, be a scientist as well. So it's another way to look at it. But probably, Claudia, you have experience with artists invited to all types of institutions.
Yes. So there are different approaches, and what I find most interesting is that when you now say she was invited to stay as a scientist, I don't think that she should stay as a scientist, she should stay as an artist.
As an artist, yes, that's what I meant.
And the other thing is that often there is this idea, or there's this, and that brings me back to a sentence, or it says, artists are aware of the limitations of their imagination, that there is often a very basic understanding of arts and artistic processes as making something beautiful and having always ideas to make something beautiful. And that's also something that I would, or that would like to bring into the scientists' education, to understand that they also understand that the artistic process is a process. It's hard work, a long work, and a lot of interaction, reflection, failure, trying again. And I think in many artistic institutions, though it's changing now, and there's a lot of interesting initiatives. There are ideas or ideals of artists more as the designer or the nice person who can do beautiful PowerPoint slides and visualizations. So there's also this need to educate the scientific side to say, okay, the art brings more than making beautiful science communication, and it's not about the artists only not only about the artists staying there and making some beautiful artwork that's somehow related to the science, but it's also about this joint process and what you can learn there. And many or most of the scientific partners I experienced and I see who had the pleasure to work with an artist completely turned into this direction and say, yes, this is the one thing we want to do.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's very optimistic. Okay.
There's a lot.
Looking forward.
Sometimes it's the experience. There's a lot around the arts because they are so much at the side. Maybe it's because they are so much at the side of any educational system as something more playful or and like physical education, whatever. So the one is to keep you fit, the other one is to have some playful element. But it's not really part of the educational system. So maybe that's the reason that there is this barrier still to bring them together. But I think either there is some clear argument bringing to the point what this collaboration can do beyond making a beautiful artwork that's somehow themed by the scientist's topic. And the experiencing such a collaboration is most effective to get any scientists on the side of being really interested in art science collaboration and seeing the benefits of these different perspectives and seeing all these possibilities these interactions also bear.
In our previous session, when artists and scientists met together this morning, one of the main ideas that came in again and again was the need of education. The exhibition here is titled New Languages because I felt that during these 3 years of collaborations, we needed to develop a new language in order to communicate. And Daniel Glaser commented beautifully that each time a biologist and a physicist are meeting, you have to develop a new language to communicate. And when I'll take it to another way of educating, when it said that when children are raised in a bilingual environment, they have it much easier for them to learn a third language. So since from childhood your education is bilingual or bi-disciplinary, you feel that you can learn everything you are interested in. When you grow up slowly, you understand that there are not limitations. It's only the time is the only limitation. And by doing so, I feel here even that the education of the institute is like that because they always meet together, biologists and physicists and everyone that is coming in. They are educated to speak together. So when an artist is coming in it's easier for them. They are already trained to to have this ear to slowly learn. And when you learn language in some colleges, you have to come over 5 days a week. You have to come every day. So it's not something that is instant. It's something that you have to put a lot of time and effort. But I think it's so beneficial and so inspiring that you cannot just ignore it. It's pleasurable.
Yes, and you're right. Language is also a tricky thing. It's the more you're used to speak only within your own discipline and within your own peer group, the more you're limited to some, or you're focusing on some disciplinary jargon you don't even recognize anymore. And so this makes it more difficult when you're speaking to somebody else from another discipline or that far, or even from the broad public. But as soon as you're aware of these aspects, things are getting easier in new collaborations and new encounters.
How important is a facilitator in art and science collaboration?
A facilitator is often very important. It depends. It's a facilitator, or it's also very much a curatorial process. It's also a lot about curation. The facilitator creates the space for the artists and scientists to meet and to engage. It's not always a very structured space, but the facilitator helps to make these conversations easier, to point to aspects, for example, where the scientists and the artists do not understand each other without noticing, or where they are overwhelmed by the ideas presented by the other. Bring it to a more rational point, maybe for the scientists, what the artist suggests, guiding the process. I love one expression Ariane Cook always for that. It's some kind of invisible leading. It's more this guiding and guidance and trying to keep the process focused and open at the same time, and also make sure that the participants really have space and dedicated time, and that it's not a one-way communication.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us of one, if you are able to speak about one difficult one that it took you time to understand how you can facilitate this collaboration?
What it's really difficult, and experienced a few years back for the first time, and now it's more obvious, is facilitating through distance. So when the different parties are at different places, to make sure that everybody gets enough space to talk to each other and that things are understood, because if you're not at the same physical space, it's much more difficult to facilitate. And it's also sometimes difficult to get hold of people, because either they think they did not get it or didn't have enough time to make the next step, so they are not easy to get hold of, although maybe it's not even necessary that they made a next step or made a next iteration of what they wanted to do. It's just this ongoing process and exchange that's so important and valuable. But as everybody is getting more used to virtual interactions, also the last virtual residencies I started to facilitate, or I facilitated, worked out better than the original one or the first ones a few years back, especially when there is something problematic happening at one site and you do not know about it, and you can't really be a translator or guide the process because you don't have full insights.
Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit similar to what I'm experiencing, but what I'm hearing for Orit is for many years as an art educator. Orit, do you feel that you have to put kind of a structure to the process and put some timeline or borders in order to keep it going? Or is it more important to give it just a free space?
Depends. If I work with students, I find it more and more hard to give them like a free time or you know, free topics, and I'm more and more not conservative but structured with them. And in time-wise, but not only time-wise, just even in terms of the way I think with them, I go step by step. While my own work is very different. As I said before, the more I got older, the more I feel that I needed time to explore whatever I want with no limitation. It's just a question of time, because the rest of it, I know how to put myself into a situation, and I trust something that I couldn't trust before. I trust something, I don't know what's the word of it, but I trust myself or something like that. And it's just a matter of time. And the time helps me to get rid of conservative thinking that I find in myself. Or, yeah, something like that.
But that's also something I experienced, that there's a difference between collaboration partners who are experienced in these new ways of or encounters between the disciplines, and those who are not used to that and who are very much into their own disciplinary processes, and it's the first time they encounter it. Sometimes even this confusion at the beginning. There's even confusion at the beginning. But this is how it works scientifically. How should I artificially impose some art on this? But giving more information, giving more structure, going through it step by step, and also giving some more space for seemingly artificial explorations naturally then lead to a more interesting process. And others don't need, especially experienced ones, sometimes don't even need any guidance anymore, because they already know what are the difficulties they encounter at the beginning and have their own pace.
Do you feel? I feel it's almost unseen part of it, but maybe you help me with your experience. There is this stage when artists and scientists are starting to understand each other field. When this step occurs, and what can help it happen? This step of, okay, we have my knowledge, we have your knowledge, and now how do we build a third knowledge that is kind of talking two of them or creating totally something new?
So if there is not one specific idea from either side what they want to explore, that keeps them focused and then takes a different track for what actually is coming out of that. There's some more structured or seemingly structured interactions help, at least in the processes that I'm guiding right now, is really to joint explore what are you doing, maybe where are connection point, where are some points of connection, what are tools that you use and that you use, what's your joint interest, what is the main interest, the artist is, what's the big goal there, and what's the big goal of the scientists. And soon you get something, some common ground to start from, without having the restrictions of the artistic process or the scientific process, but really talking about what is your major interest, what drives you, and soon there is something to discuss and something to develop. together.
I think that sometimes there's no product at the end. There's no conclusion. It's only the process that was very interesting. And as long as the two sides, or as many sides as are involved, that sometimes the process is the idea, I think it's a relief.
The process is can be so important, and as I said also before, it's much about learning skills, building up skills, bringing in new perspectives, and it's a process that enriches everybody. And then maybe the artist has, I don't know how many artworks 4 or 5 years later somehow inspired by this, and the scientists took new turns in their research questions, somehow rooted in all this interaction, but maybe also in help them to grow some new skills in interdisciplinary collaborations with other scientific disciplines.
I must say that I don't have an experience with working with with scientists, but I do have some experience working with other artists. Recently, I belong to a group of artists that try to do something together, which is a very new experiment for me, experience. And what I find is that it's not a question of whether we have results or we just end up with the process, interesting process. For me, it's the moment that I feel responsible. It's a very defined moment between I'm interested intellectually and I'm interested in the argument and the talks. Very interesting indeed. But there is one moment that I feel it's mine. I'm responsible to this. I want to be involved. And from that moment, every failure and every achievement, it's mine. And it's a very different experience for me. And it's very interesting for me to know that it can happen not only me and, me privately, but also with a group. This was a very new experience for me.
It's a beautiful moment, I think, that when you feel ownership. And
yes, it's my baby.
And I think that I sometimes can see it in the eyes of an artist and scientist meeting together. There is this interest, big eyes, and then determination of, yes, we are rowing this boat together, and we'll do it as long as we can. And I think that it's not easy, but when it happens, it leads to just new horizons, and probably Claudia can tell us about those moments. Or maybe do you have a collaboration, like an historical one in your history, that now you look back and you say, wow, it changed the way the artist and the scientist are working now or work together, because we said that we need time to look at those things?
There are some moments that I, maybe not so much about the work process or this ownership, but some magical moments. For example, at an astronomer's facility, when I first came with artists and brought them there, I met a lot of scientists before we actually introduced the artists, and there were some scientists really with big question marks and say, yeah, of course I can talk to the artists, and I can give them information, but I'm not sure how it will enrich my process, because I've spent years and decades researching and working and perfectioning. And the same scientists then, a year later, were super excited and saying, oh yes, now I understand that there are different perspectives and that there is something that is given back, and it's not just a one-directional path of giving information or receiving information. And these are the moments that I really appreciate a lot when I hear this from skeptical people who then experience and are really convinced that it is a beneficial process, even if they are not 100% part of the process, but experience it only, slightly as a visitor. But then there are also others, scientists who told me that an experimental physicist who told me that after working with the artist, he started inviting chemists to his research projects. Now he understood that he could invite them and how he could connect. And I think these are very good moments.
Wonderful. So we have to soon conclude the whole thing. I just wanted to ask you if we have questions to each other before we conclude. Orit, you always have good questions, I know.
No, I'm just, I think if I need some advice is how I go on. I mean, I don't need, when it comes to my art, I know what to do, but when it comes to the research of creative processes, then I would like to know if there is a place or people or knowledge or whatever that I should engage with. It's a big question, but and it's not have to be like answered now. It's just that I would love to be connected and to collaborate with people, not to be on my own in this research. Because even in this short-term conference, it was a very, very interesting and teaching for me.
Wonderful.
I think it's a beautiful last or final statement, because we all should be connected. It's all about exchanging and connecting and collaborating.
I hope so. It was very nice and very interesting pleasure to meet you and to hear you. And of Tal, of course, I know Tal.
It was a pleasure to meet you. It was a pleasure, as I said, it gave me goosebumps to see your work and explaining your process.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you both. It was inspiring, and I'm going to run to my studio now after meeting you, and to my desk and write another idea for an exhibition here. But just before doing it, I want to thank the Nanotechnology Institute and Professor Dror Fixler, the head of the institute, for hosting us today. And our museum is hosted within a university, within an institute, so we are inside a different institute, and still it let us think and give us so many options to choose from, and for many conversations. And just a last happy note, we just got a permission to translate a part of Claudia's book to Hebrew and Arabic. So it will be possible and available soon for in our museum catalog. Thank you, Claudia, for walking us through the process. And I want to thank the whole participants of Transmit Festival, everyone that helped and advised and heard us after many cancellations due to COVID, and we are so happy that you could be with us, and hope to see you soon. Chat with us, write to us. We will be happy to hear everything.
Thank you. Thank you to giving us the chance to be here.
Thank you too.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Please.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.